Hey, and welcome back to another episode of Chef's Paradise Live. I'm Chef Walid. Today we're going to be working on a stuffed eggplant dish that takes some influence from the south of Spain. So for this stuffed eggplant dish, there's going to be three components. Component A is going to be the stew. So for the stew, you'll need 2 white onions that have been chopped up, 5 tomatoes that have been chopped up. You'll need some Spanish paprika, some ground cumin, some caraway seed, and some finely chopped garlic. You'll also obviously need an eggplant. If you don't have this, you're not going to do much with this dish. We're also going to be doing a quickled onion. So this is essentially the term quick and pickle together. So it's a quickled onion. We have a 4-herb salad comprised of mint, dill, cilantro, and parsley. This is going to add an abundance of freshness to the dish. This is really sweet and dense. So this is going to give it some nice offset of flavor. So we're going to get started by cutting up our eggplants and getting into the oven. So to start, you're going to want to cut the eggplant down the middle. So you want to keep as much as the top and the bottom intact for showcase purposes. So then, in order for the salt and oil to permeate the meat, you're going to want to create X's and incisions. So you'll take a crosshatch across the body of the meat. Once your eggplants are crosshatched, you're going to transfer them to your baking sheet. You're going to take a little bit of canola oil, dress it on, and a little bit of olive oil and dress it on. And you'll repeat the same thing with the second eggplant. Last but not least, you're going to need some salt. The seasoning is not an imperative point to this stage in the recipe, as the final part of the eggplants is going to be put back into the actual stew. So then you want to put this into the oven at 450 degrees Fahrenheit for approximately 18 to 20 minutes. All right, so for the quickled onions, you're going to need some form of bag. I'm using a stasher bag. These are great for sous videing. They're great for taking your sandwich to work, something simple. They're also leak-proof, which is fantastic. But if you don't have one of these, you can easily use a Ziploc bag. So what you want to do is you want to place your thinly sliced onions that are in your bowl into the bag. Again, these can be done with white onions. They don't necessarily have to be red onions. Then you want to take to each, this is approximately 1 onion, and you want to take 1 tablespoon of salt worth, and then you want to take the equivalent of 2 limes juice worth. So I'm just going to free ball it here. So then you want to close up your bag and give it a good shake like a Polaroid picture. So let this sit on the counter for approximately 35 minutes, and you'll have a good quick pickle. All right, so we're gonna start the stew part of the process. With this, you're going to need a thick bottom pan. The thick bottom pan is because we need even heat dispersion for the onions and the garlic, as we do want to get a little bit of color on them. You want to get this onto a really, really high temperature. So you want to get this as high as possible. So then you want to put a little blend of canola oil and olive oil. And the reason we do this is because olive oil has a much lower smoke point than canola oil. So you want to put about 2 tablespoons of canola and then 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Okay, so now we're going to wait for that to heat up. All right, so now that the oil's hot, you're going to want to put in your onions first. And you want to give it a good stir, make sure all the onions are covered in oil. So this may look like a lot, but in actual fact, it's going to cook down, and this is technically dinner for 2. So the primary focus of this dish is the actual stew itself. All right, so it's been about 4 or 5 minutes. The onions are starting to become mildly translucent. We're going to add the garlic in. This is approximately 2 tablespoons of garlic, and we're going to add 1 full tablespoon of salt. The importance of seasoning early is that salt is hygroscopic. It will remove a lot of the moisture from the onions and replace it with salt. You can always tell when a dish has been seasoned at the end, and that's usually surface seasoning. But the importance of seasoning as you go is that salt will layer the flavors. All right, so the onions are nearing where we need them to be. You want it to be fairly caramelized on the bottom. You should see a little bit of color on some of the onions. What's a great thing about this dish actually is that it's nice and light, but you can definitely make this meal heavier with some bulgur, some chickpeas, some lentils. Those all go a really far way. If you are going to put any of those in here, I would put them in at the stage in which we added tomatoes, which is going to be happening right now. We're going to add all of our tomatoes in. So then you're going to want to also add all of your spices at this point. So we have caraway seed. So this is going to add a very nice florality to the dish. So there's 2 tablespoons of this. There's 1.5 tablespoons of ground cumin. And the star of the dish, the Spanish paprika. So there's 2 tablespoons of this. And Spanish paprika is one of the highlights of this dish for the reason that Spanish paprika is very highly coveted. It's got a very short growing season, and it's also one of their major exports, and they do it really well. We're going to also finish with 1 more tablespoon of salt, and this is going to take the rest of the way. So now that everything is kind of homogenized and in the pan and together, we're going to let the flavors kind of meld together for the next 8 to 10 minutes. And it should look nice and rich and stew-like once it's done. All right, so now that it's all nice and simmering away, your kitchen should start to smell like a market, a spice market. So now that it's all kind of melting away together, you're gonna wanna turn down the stove to about like if it's on full tilt, you want to turn down half the way to a simmer. And then let that proceed to cook for an additional 6 to 7 minutes. All right, so now that everything's kind of nice and stewed together and everything's kind of melted in and all the tomatoes are broken down, you do want to give yourself a quick taste test. Make sure that you're happy with the salt levels and the lemon juice levels. Okay, so I think salt's good. I'm gonna add 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, and I'm gonna give it one final stir. So you can keep this on really low heat in this process, but now we're gonna take the eggplants out of the oven. So now that the eggplants are out of the oven, you wanna give a quick check to them. You wanna make sure what you're looking for is nice, soft, a little bit spongy, but you're definitely looking for any firmness. If there's any firmness, put them back in the oven. Check periodically every 5 minutes. So mine are nice and done. I'm gonna take a spoon you need something fairly large that's gonna be able to scoop the innards out. The innards are gonna be scooped out and then put into our stew. So you wanna be slightly careful with this. It is very hot, so you wanna work very carefully and very gently. You do wanna keep a little barrier of eggplant on the inside, just like this, for the sole reason that this is going to give the structural rigidity that you need. Okay, so as you see, we've left a good 1/4 inch of eggplant around the rim of the eggplant. So like I said, this is gonna create that structural rigidity for when we put the stew back inside of it. So now we're going to be stirring in the eggplant innards into the stew to evenly combine them. This is gonna give the stew nice hardiness. Keep in mind, like I mentioned before, you can easily add chickpeas to this, you can add lentils, you could even add some grains to this. You can add some freekeh, you can add some bulgur. You could go as far as even adding more eggplants. All right, so now that the eggplant's all nice and homogenized into the stew and it's looking nice and thick, it's what you're looking for, you wanna take your eggplants, put them on some form of heat-safe counter, cycle back to your pickled onions. You should have a good formation of liquid on the bottom. You should feel the onions are a little bit more broken down now. You wanna give that a quick shake again. Make sure that they're all coated. Okay, so now that that's gonna sit for a little bit, the last phase of the eggplant is you want to stuff the stew back into the actual eggplant. All right, so now that the eggplants are all stuffed, we're on to the final and last phase, which is the garnishing phase. So you want to grab your eggplants. We're going to place the eggplants on the towel. So the next step would be to grab your 4-herb salad. So in here we have basil, we have mint, we have some dill, and we have some parsley. So for the salad dressing, you're going to need lemon juice, 1 tablespoon. Do not mix the salad in advance, as the acid will eat your greens. Then you want a tablespoon of olive oil, and you want to give that a good stir. All right, so now onto the eggplants. So you want to very gently transfer one of these eggplants onto your plate. Again, this feeds 2. The amount of stew you've made, it's enough to feed 4. But yeah, you want to take one of your eggplants, transfer it ever so gently onto a plate. You want to dress it with the salad. So again, the salad is really, really refreshing, and it's meant to be cutting of the stew, as how rich the stew is. So again, there's enough salad in here to feed 2 people. And then lastly but not least, your Polaroid onions. So these guys, a quick final shake. And we're gonna take these straight out of the bag. These will last up to a week in the fridge. So if you've got taco night coming up, save them in the fridge. So you wanna put a few of these on top. I'm a lover of onions, so I really enjoy a good amount of onions on the plate. And then our beautiful flowers, I'm gonna go with some violas. They're a little bit peppery. I don't think we have much pepper represented on this plate right now. All right, so that concludes our stuffed eggplant dish with 4-herb salad and pickled onion. If you do make this dish at home, please feel free to submit your pictures to us at Chef's Paradise or personally to the Casual Sultan. I think it'd be cool. We can share some recipes after that. Again, thank you for joining us. It's been a blast.